there, welcome back to the Energy MD podcast, where we help you resolve your long COVID and chronic fatigue syndrome so that you can get back to living your best life. I'm Evan Hirsch, and today we're going to be talking about what to do if you've treated yourself for heavy metals and you haven't gotten better. So this typically means you've gone to see a functional medicine provider, integrative medicine, natural medicine, and they think that maybe your long COVID or chronic fatigue syndrome is caused by heavy metal toxicity, and they test you. They'll typically do a urine test, usually provoked, which means that you're going to take a chelating agent, an agent that's going to bind to heavy metals in the tissues, pull it into the bloodstream, and then so that you can measure it in the urine. This typically will be something like DMSA or EDTA or DMPS or something else. And that is a pretty good test to determine whether or not there are heavy metals present. And then if you find that they're present, whether it's mercury or lead or arsenic, they might treat you with some of those same agents. Or if they're going to go more natural, they're going to use things like cilantro and chlorella and zeolites, etc. So if you've gone through this process and you've done a repeat test and you're finding that heavy metals are not present, that means that you've gotten rid of them essentially over the course of the next 6 or 12 months. Oftentimes it takes that long to get them out of the body. Maybe you're feeling a little bit better, but your still symptoms are still not resolved. You may be wondering why that is the case. So if you've heard me speak, you know that I talk a lot about the toxic five. So this is a combination of heavy metals, chemicals, molds, infections, and nervous system dysfunction that cumulatively end up causing chronic fatigue syndrome and long COVID, in my experience. And by addressing all of these, that is the way that we in the Energy MD program help people get to the finish line and get rid of their symptoms. So generally, when you are addressing one of these things, whether it's heavy metals or chemicals or molds or infections or nervous system dysfunction, it will get you partially of the way there, but not all the way. So it's really important to make sure that you're addressing all of these if you're not getting complete resolution. Now, there are some people who will treat their heavy metals and they'll get all the way better. And that's wonderful. And that means that the heavy metals were really a significant part. And the other components were either not a significant part or they came out when you were detoxifying because there's a lot of crossover. If there are heavy metals and chemicals, generally the treatments are going to address those as well. Chlorella also addresses molds, so there's a number of things that can be happening here. But in my experience, that's generally the reason why when people come to see me and they're like, I've been working on removing these heavy metals out of my body for years, and I finally got them out, but I'm still not better. What's going on? So I wanted to address that in this episode today. I also want to talk about the challenges with testing. So, as I mentioned, the best test from a functional medicine perspective is in terms of assessing for heavy metal burden in the body is doing this challenge test where you're binding the heavy metals in the tissues, pulling them into the bloodstream so that you can check them in the urine. So it is a urine test. There's a couple of challenges with this test. One is that most of the people that I work with cannot necessarily tolerate the chelation, the provocation or the chelation, where basically you're taking an agent to bind up the toxins that are in the tissues, in the organs, etc., and pull them into the bloodstream because their detoxification pathways, drainage pathways are so clogged that they can't actually get the toxins out of the body. And so then they just go into a different compartment and people feel worse. So that's one problem with this test. The other thing is that the test is really a test of excretion, which basically means that the test will tell you how well you're getting rid of things out of the body. So when you have chronic fatigue syndrome and long COVID, your detox pathways are essentially clogged. You've got the toxins and the infections that have built up in the body that are inhibiting your ability to get them out. So unfortunately, it's a little bit of a catch-22. You want to get these toxins out, but you can't because there's so many toxins in the body. And so unfortunately, that ends up contributing to this overall picture. So then the test really doesn't help you because generally the test is going to show up as negative. So if you're not excreting well, because you have these toxins and infections in your body, then when you do this urine test, you're not going to find heavy metals. So a lot of people out there are very surprised when they feel as crappy as they do and they go to check their urine and they're not finding any heavy metals. And so that's the reason why. Okay. So one of the things that we do in our program is we actually treat you for all of the toxic five without testing. Because in my experience over the last 10 years of doing this work with people with chronic fatigue syndrome, is that I find that over the course of 12 months, as we do this work and we're opening up the drainage pathways, the liver, the kidney, the lymph, the neural lymph that's in the brain, the gallbladder, the intestines, etc., as we open up those pathways, all heavy metals, chemicals, molds, infections, all of them end up getting excreted. So what I found is that it just takes it's going to save you time and energy and money to just treat those things because the testing is imperfect. You're going to make sure that you're not missing anything because that's really the biggest thing when it comes to this. And when I get on calls with people to see if I can help them, it's all about what have you been missing or what has your provider been missing, right? This is not your fault. You're doing the best that you can, but providers are just kind of limited in this knowledge unless they specialize it and they see it all day long. So that's an important point about testing is that don't trust the testing and that generally if you have I say all the time with the people I work with, if you have long COVID or chronic fatigue syndrome, you're going to want to address all the heavy metals that are present. Now the question also goes into play, what's the dynamic between heavy metals, chemicals, molds, and infections? And essentially you cannot get rid of infections if you have heavy metals, chemicals, or molds in the body. The immune system is going to be so distracted by these toxins that it will not be able to help you get rid of infections. And you can't get rid of infections with antibiotics or with herbs alone. That's why it's really important to make sure that you're addressing all of these things at the same time as well. Let's also talk a little bit about prescription chelating agents like DMSA, DMPS, and EDTA versus the natural. So when I had my brick and mortar clinic and I was treating people utilizing these prescription agents, unfortunately, I saw redeposition, which basically means, and recirculation, which basically means you're pulling the heavy metals out of one spot in the body and they're being redeposited into another spot. And I never like making people worse. Okay, that's not my goal. That's not why I do this work. I want to always do my best to not harm people and to help them get better. So when I found out that there were natural tools like cilantro and chlorella and zeolite, etc., I found that they were successful. I moved away from those prescription agents, right? I took an oath, first do no harm. And so I find that it's better to, the body really likes small changes over an extended period of time. So when I tell people how long it takes, I say it's going to take at least 12 months. But in that 12-month period, we're going to get rid of all of your heavy metals and chemicals and molds and infections and retrain your nervous system. And it may not be all of it by that point in time, but it's going to be a really significant dent. If you do need another 6 months or so in order to get rid of the last remaining bits or whatever, that's fine. But generally, it takes at least 12 months for people to get better because we go slow and steady and we listen to the body and we detoxify at a rate that the body can tolerate, and everybody's body is different, right? So that's why we also use tinctures. About half of what we use is capsules, half of what we use is tinctures, because the tinctures allow us to ramp up at a slow rate so that we can see how an individual is doing with those so that you can get that steady progress over time. Slow and steady wins the race. The body likes small changes. Those are things I say a lot in our program. The last thing I want to talk about is a little bit more around the association between what I call the toxic matrix. And so this is the relationship, once again, between the heavy metals, the chemicals, the molds, and the infections, where they're all really bound up to each other in the body. And when you start releasing one of these things, if you're going to start pulling out heavy metals, you're actually going to be releasing the other ones as well. That's why it's really important to make sure that you have things on board to address the chemicals, the molds, and the infections that are being released when you're going after heavy metals as well. Okay, so just very important, and another reason why we go after them all at the same time. So I hope this was helpful today. If you have any questions, please drop them in the comments below. If you liked this video, if you thought it was helpful, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss great content moving forward. If you are interested in seeing if we're a good fit to work together, you can go ahead and click on the link below, jump into my latest masterclass and watch it. It's 40 minutes. If you want to watch it on 2x speed, you can, then it'll be 20 minutes. And then you'll be prompted to get on a free call with me, which is 45 minutes to an hour, where we can see if we're a good fit to work together. I'll ask you to fill out a form, and based on that form, I'll ask you some questions on the call, and I'll basically go through a process to see whether or not I believe that I can help you. And if I do, then we can kind of go into what's included in the program. I should tell you that about a third of the people that I get on calls with, I tell them that I don't believe that we're a good fit to work together for one reason or another. So it's not a guarantee that if we get on a call that I'm going to tell you that I believe that I can help you. So hopefully this is helpful. I wish you all the best. I hope you have an amazing day, and I hope you resolve your symptoms soon. All right, be well. I hope you learned something on today's podcast. If you did, please share it with your friends and family and leave us a 5-star review on iTunes. It's really helpful for getting this information out to more people who desperately need it. Sharing all the experts I know and love and the powerful tips I have is one of my absolute favorite things to do. Thanks for being part of my community. Just a reminder, this podcast is for educational purposes only and is not a substitute for professional care by a doctor or other qualified medical professional. It is provided with the understanding that it does not constitute medical or other professional advice or services. Thanks for listening, and have an amazing day.